Alright YouTube, in this video we are going to see how to create draggable list. If I type something and click on plus, you will see the list is getting incremented. So you are only allowed to add only 4. If I try to allow the fifth one, it says the alert message and it will not allow us to insert again. Now you can see if I close something and if I try to insert again, it will allow me since there are only 3 list. If I try to add again, it will show allow since because it's already 4 over there. Now you can drag and change the position. Now you can see the first is at the last. I want the sixth to be at the top. I want the third to be at the third and I want the four accordingly you can change the position but just by dragging using HTML. Now you will get the source code in the description. And what are we going to see in this tutorial? First, we say we are only allowed to add only 4. Consider this as a feature of a bike. You can add 4 features of it, only 4. And in case if you have changed your mind, you can change the position, or if you want to edit, you are free to edit. It's a text field, that means input type equal to text. And if you want to remove, you can remove it by clicking on the X. Now you can see I have added the fourth list. I would like to add one more thing, or if I try to remove, you can see I have removed it. I will try to add one more feature and click on plus, it will append to the last. Now I want to change the position. Now easily I can do it just by dragging. Now this will be appended to the last and I want it to be under first. Let me remove one and let me add one more list. You'll get the source code in the description. And in this tutorial we are just going to focus on the JavaScript, not on the CSS part. Fine. Now we can remove as well. We can change and drag the position. It's editable, as I said. It's input field. Drag and change the position. Yes, we can drag it. Now the first thing what we're going to do is, let me show you the structure, or you can see the files. We have 3 files, one HTML, one style sheet and one script file. Let me remove all the script and store it into the backup.txt. In case if we get stuck, we can see over there. And I'm going to uncomment one div. This div, you can see, this is the div which I have uncommented it. So let's define the HTML. I have one input field and one button. Let me store the ID of the input field and the button so that I can use it in the JavaScript. And now we have a container, and this container holds a list. This list is a div, and this div has one input field and one span tag. The span tag is the X and input field is the form field. Fine. It has a class draggable, and draggable is equal to true is a attribute. Make sure you have added draggable true. It is when it is that way you are allowed to drag in the HTML. Fine. Now the very first thing what we are going to do is we are going to append the div to the container. That means we are going to dynamically create this div and going to add it on clicking on the plus button. For that we are going to get all the IDs, and let me store all the element into the variable just by calling the ID of it. It can be done by using document.getElementById, and I have stored it into a variable. Since we have 3 variables, the first and second one is ID, the third one is the class. For that we have the property get elements by class name, and we have only one class, that's why I'm passing index 0. Now we are going to add listener to the button. Let's add the listener. We are going to add the listener click. Once I click on the button, what should happen is it should dynamically create a div, and inside the div I'm going to append the HTML and I'm going to insert it into the container. Fine. Once I click, what I need is I'm going to create a div. To create a div in JavaScript, so this is the div we are going to create. Let me copy and paste into the script tag so that you can see what we are going to create. So to create a div in JavaScript, document.createElement is a tag, and inside that you have to pass the HTML, which is div. I store it into a variable called div, and this div let me uncomment it. Let me comment it so that you can see. Comment it. Fine. Now you can see it has a class. To add the class to the dynamically created div, you need to use the property called class list and then the function add. And draggable is a class, and we need to add the attribute as well. So div dot set attribute, and set attribute has two property. The first one is property name and the second one is value. Here in this case it's property value, property name draggable, and the value is true. Fine. Now we have to append, or you can say we have to insert the HTML inside the div. So the shortcut way is inner HTML, and use the backtick and just copy paste the HTML. Fine. Now your dynamically created div has one input field and one span tag. So I'm going to change the value of the input field. You can see this is the variable which holds the value of the text. So let me store into a variable called insert text, and I'm going to use it to use the variable insert backtick. This is the way we create. Now what we are going to do is I'm going to append the div to the container. I have already used the container dot append child, and inside the appended child we're going to use a variable div. Now you can see if you click on the plus button, what happens is a div would be dynamically created. Let me remove the previous one. Now if you see, if I type something and click on plus, the div will be created with the text. The second thing what we are going to do is we are going to add, once we click on the X button. So let me, on clicking on the plus button, I want the form field to have null value, nothing. So right now if I click on the X, nothing is getting happening. So for that, use the add listener. Please note, you have to use the add listener just after the dynamically created div, or else it won't work. So the click function will simply get the, since you can see the cross button is a class. Whenever you use a class, the class will be of multiple. The IDs will be simple. The ID will be single, and the class will have multiple. So for that, I'm going to use the query selector all, and this will hold all the classes name cross button. Now let me show you. You can see if I make something, if I make something like, you can see there's a load list. This node list is simply the class. We have multiple class, that's why we are getting node list. To access one by one, for that we are going to use for each. So just by using for each, we can add listener to individual classes. So you can see, let me uncomment it, and now in place of it will come over there. Fine. Now if I check console and log, you will get the class name. Fine. You can see there's already node list. Let me yeah, now it will work. You have to click on the X, that's when it get triggered. You can see there are values. Now what we need is, we are going to call its parent, and its parent is simply the dynamically created div. If you click on it, you will get the dynamically created div with class draggable. You can see now I want to remove it. Dot remove is the function, and now that would work. If you insert some value, and if you wish to delete it, you can click on the X button, and it will delete the parent element, which is our dynamically created div. Now the next step is, we have completed all this. Now we are only allowed to add only 4 list. So for that, we are going to get the length of the field, sorry, the length of the draggable class. You can see both of them has the class draggable. We are going to get the number of draggable class, get all draggable. For that, we have to use document.query selector all, and it will give you the node list. As we have already seen, the classes gives the node list. And this, if we are going to condition, we are going to check before condition. Let me show you. You will get the element. Now you can see we are getting the node list. The length will simply give the total number of list. It starts from 0 and ends with the total. You can see. Now if it is, we are going to give a condition. Since we are only allowed to add 4, we have to make 3. I will mistakenly make 4. It's 3. If it is less than 3, sorry, if it is greater than 3, then remove it. Now we will be able to allow 5 because it starts from 0. You can see we are able to add 5. If I make it 3, it starts from 0. As I said, you are only allowed to add 4. If it is greater than 4, it will exit the function. What is the function? The function is simply the click event. Fine. Before that, before returning, I want to show the message. Let me add and show you. If it is exceeds more than 3, it says only 4 allowed. Fine. Now the next thing what we are going to do is, we are going to check if the value is empty or not on the input field. If it is empty, it will not allow us to add. Fine. Now if the text box is empty, show the message. So as we already know, we have stored the text value on the variable. If this is empty, then the same way, show the message and return from the function. Let me add the message as well. Alert. You can give any message. In this case, I'm just giving insert some text. So after that, the fun part comes. Here we are going to add the draggable elements. So we can now drag and change the position of it. Now we have completed the steps. Now it's time for the drag. Let's start with the starting. We are going to get all the draggable class. We know all the div has the class draggable. We are going to get the total number of draggable class. We did it by get element by query name, document.query name. So it will return the node list. It's a class, so it will definitely return the node list. You can see it's 0, now it's 2, now it's 3. So now each of them, I'm going to use the for each. Each of them will have the listener. Here I'm going to give two listener. The first one is drag start and the second one is drag end. If I try to drag, it will give the message drag start. If I leave the div, it will give the message drag end. You can see the first drag start listener has been added. Now it's time for the drag end listener. Let me give drag end. If you see, if I try to add something, if I try to add, it says drag started. If I leave, it says drag end. So we have got the idea. Now it's time to replace the message with the class. Now I want to add a class called dragging, and this dragging, what it will do is, it will just give the style CSS just by making it opacity little bit down. And for the you can see I have made a mistake. It's dragging, not dragging. This is how it looks before adding dragging. You can see the text field are not dim. Now if you change the spelling, if you add the proper class, if I try to drag, you can see the input field will get the opacity a little bit dull. Fine. Now we are going to add listener to the container. The container div holds all the dynamically added div. So going to add the listener drag over to the container. and I will show you the message first. On the console, if I try to drag some element over the container, it will give the message drag over container. So your div is going to get dynamically added on the container. If I try to drag over the container, it is going to give the message. Now we are going to get all the element. So to get all the element, what we need is we will use the query selector all the div has the class draggable, and I will store it into a variable called draggable. And it's node list, it is going to give multiple. So for that, we're going to use a for each. Now right now we are not going to use a for each. We're going to just append it to the container. Instead of all the element, we just need only one, which we are currently dragging. As we already added the listener drag start and drag end, once I start to drag, I will get the class dragging. If I start to drag, I will get the dragging, and it will append to the last. You see there is an error. It says, let me see what it is. It's only one value, so dragging query selector instead of query selector all, it is just query selector. Now you can see, if I try to drag, it will automatically append it to the last. Whether I try to add to the second, whether I try to third, it is not going to allow me to add. It will directly append it to the last. It is because of this code. Let me comment it. We have successfully completed the steps. Now it's time to change the position as our wish. Now we are only allowed to get the we are only allowed to drag and append. We are only allowed to append to the container. That means it is only allowed to drag to the last. So right now what we are going to do is, we are going to change the position as per our need. If I want to drag it to the second place, if I want to drag it to the third place, it need to be allowed. So for that, the very first thing what I'm going to do is, I'm going to get the position of the mouse on the container. So for that, e dot client y is a thing which will give you the position of the mouse over the container. So you can see it's not working. It's because e dot will come. That's the reason why I have passed e. So let's console and log e. What are we getting? This e is simply the element. It is going to give all the elements. So I don't need the element details. I just need the position of the mouse. To get the position of the mouse, we would use client y, and I would pass it to a function. So just by performing some operation, I will get the element. You can see I'm going to pass it to a function, and let me name the function as get element, and this function will return element, and this element it will allow me to change the position as per our wish. Now the very first thing what we are going to do is get all draggable elements except the class dragging. So as we know, we are going to get all the elements. All the element in the container has the class draggable, and there is one condition: we don't need the dragging class. The dragging class is what we are dragging at present. When we start to drag, this dragging class is dynamically get added to the current dragging element. Now let me show you. And this draggable will only have the, let me add only two and show you. This drag element will only have the element which is not dragging. You can see only one element. I'm going to convert it to an array. Previously it was a node list. You can see it's a node list. Now if you see, it will be an array. I have used array just because I'm going to use a function called reduce. and that was the spread operator, dot dot dot, and dot reduce will give you the element which will get appended now. And this reduce will have two parameter. The first one is closest. You can give any name. The second one is the child, one by one. In this case it's our one by one draggable element, and in the second parameter we are going to initialize the closest, and I'm making it as an object, and inside the offset I am going to store the maximum negative number. Now I want the position. If you see, if I try to drag, I want all the elements height, all the elements position from the top. So for that, get bounding client rect will allow me to give the details of the box inside the container. Here you can see we have only one. It will give all the details, top, height, left, bottom, and height and width to it. So I'm going to get a variable called offset, and it will have the y-axis, mouse position from y, and box dot top. It's the distance from the top of the browser screen, not on the browser screen, top of the container, and then box dot height. It will give you the height, and I want to divide it by 2. Now why divide by 2? I want the position to start from the center, not from the top. So if the offset value returns negative in the sense if it is less than 0 and it is in between the offset, closest dot offset, you already know we have already initialized the closest dot offset as number dot negative infinity. If it is in between, if it is below 0 and if it is in between negative infinity, what we are going to do is we are going to return the element, and this element we will append it. You can see we are going to return offset and the element. We are returning the object. We are returning the object, and element, and the element is simply the child, which we have passed to the reduce. Else just return the offset. Now this function will return a variable. Now I'm going to insert it. I'm going to insert it before the dragging class. So if you see, it will work. Let me see what is it. I think I have not refreshed it. Let me add some of the list so that we can drag it and change the position. It is only allowing us to append the child. Let me hard refresh it, and let me add some of the list. Now if you drag and change the position, it is allowing us to add. You can see, if I want to change the position of the second, if I want to change the position of the fourth, it is allowing us to add. Thank you so much for listening. Get the source code in the description.